please, Mr. Bharat Joshi. Can I start by saying I have your book at home, and I haven't got to it yet, but I will shortly. But can I please get your thoughts?
Kia ora and namaste. I'm delighted to be on this distinguished panel with old and new friends, and also greetings to an equally distinguished audience, both joining in virtually and at this late hour physically in New Zealand. So we heard yesterday that there was a collective agreement that for too long the New Zealand-India trade relationship has been dominated by a hope, if not an actual expectation, that a free trade deal might open doors to greater trade and indeed investment flows. And while this is true, it's equally true that the absence of said trade deal hasn't really served as the handbrake that we might have imagined. Trade and services, and in particular in certain sectors, have in fact been growing exponentially, well, pre-COVID at least. And we've also witnessed examples where both sides have shown ingenuity, and through this ingenuity, they've demonstrated an ability to deliver strong trade outcomes. In particular, I'm thinking of a wide range of B2B or business to business outcomes that are less dependent on macro policy settings and more to the point on what makes sense for two sides. But as is often the case, relationships are critical. And this is where B2B and even P2P, peer-to-peer or people-to-people platforms come into play. If I may offer my own example that might be of interest here, in the year 2016, we formed a joint venture with a Japanese company. This is a respected partner, 141 years old this year, to deliver freight across the length and breadth of India. And this is a railway company, so it owns trains of several types. It therefore needs to have different assets, then ply them across one of the world's most extensive railway networks. Of course, different licenses apply for different types of trains and so on. And bear in mind, the railways is often considered a government within the government. And as recently as 5 or 6 years ago, the railways had a separate budget. So, we would have a finance budget for the entire country, and then a railways budget was also presented in the parliament. So this might seem to be, at least on paper and sometimes even in reality, difficult and perhaps a perplexing business to be in. And add to this the factor that our esteemed partners come from a non-test playing country. So, well, despite all of these seemingly challenging situations and constraints, I'm very happy to report that we've been witnessing year-on-year growth, which is in the high double digits. And we expect this rate of growth to continue. And this just goes to, demonstrate that one can be in a business that, seems to, have red flags all over it, and, grow the business sustainably and generate employment. And in many ways, I think it's more of a testament to utilizing the best of both worlds. And in our case, it's been the Japanese technology, methodical way of working and investment mixed with the local Indian expertise and know-how. So in a sense, it's thinking global but acting local. This JV has had the advantage of meeting local trade priorities, creating employment, as I said, supporting the movement of locally manufactured goods. And this, of course, helps both the Make in India program as well as international trade, because, half the business still, I said we have different types of trains, half of it is purely moving containers, so export and import containers. But also bilaterally, it's an example of where two countries can come together to co-create value. There is nothing in the way of these ventures being formed between New Zealand and Indian partners across a range of sectors, including services. And I look forward to discussing some of these options in the Q&A. As long as, Michael, these questions have nothing to do with test cricket. Kia ora and thank you.
Thank you, Bharat. And nothing about cricket, I can assure you, though I have noted the commentary about it tonight. I'm actually going to come back to you, Bharat, with a question shortly. I'm just noticing that we've got about 12 minutes left of the session. So I'm just going to throw to Dr. Divya Jaitly, just for your opening remarks, please. So,
okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, give me a thumbs up if I'm audible, Michael. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, and kia ora and namaskar. And it is a privilege, rather a proud privilege, to be with all of you at this esteemed panel. I'll try and keep it short, Michael, to make your life easier so that you can continue asking questions to everybody. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you know, it has famously been said that crisis does not build character, rather reveals it. And that's where I'm coming from. I know a lot of esteemed panelists have been talking about trade and what regulations and what all policies we should be doing. But I think we all will agree in principle that every organization or every business or every tie or bond or relationship which goes from one milestone to the other between two countries is based on its people. We always have been talking about in a pre-pandemic era when it comes to financial capital and FDIs and FTAs. But let me tell you something, that I need to lay a lot of focus on the fact that human capital today has become extremely important. Bharat did mention something about it, that people to people connect. Even Simon touched upon it. And I'm very happy to be elaborating here that we all know that more than 52% of Fortune 500 companies since 2020 have actually become extinct. And companies are nothing but made up of people. So if we want to move forward between the two nations and we want to bring stronger ties, stronger bonds, we want to open so many doorways, we actually, I think, have to work on the pillars of 3 R's, I like to call it. One is, of course, regularity, regular interactions, regularities in business, in trade, very, very important. Responsibilities, we all need to take up more responsibilities as business leaders, and not to forget respect for each other's culture and ethos. And I think a testimony, or taking a lead from the story of the congratulatory moment that we all have been celebrating, of the glorious victory of how Kane and Kohli partnership actually gave us a delightful treat to our senses on the pitch. It is a wonderful moment, and I think those leaders have actually led their teams. It's not about winning or losing, but I think as an exemplary partnership that was displayed through an iconic match. And I hope to see that amongst other sectors and industries between the two nations as well. Over to you, Michael.
Thank you very much, and you really did keep the time, so congratulations on that. Again, I'll come back to just to hear his opening remarks. I'm going to ask Mr. Udaya Bhaskar to speak first, and then I'll come back to speak next, and then I'll come back to the three of you with some questions. Mr. Bhaskar, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Michael. I'm thinking that you forget my presence in this panel discussion. So anyhow, good evening to everyone. I'm going to touch upon the Indian pharmaceutical industry and its capabilities, and how we can collaborate with New Zealand, particularly in the area of generic formulations. Pharmaceuticals Export Promotion Council of India is formed under foreign trade policy with an objective to facilitate exports. In the last financial year, the Indian financial year, you're all aware of that, April to March, the financial 21, we exported $23.7 billion worth of generic medicines mostly, and with a growth rate of 15.4%. So all the speakers, particularly, from Amitabh Kant and everyone from CII, my friend, they're all talking about the manufacturing sector, not only in India and globally, is also not doing well. But at this difficult times, Indian pharmaceutical industry recorded 15.4% growth after 5 years. So that clearly demonstrates that, India is becoming strong in producing the quality medicines at a very affordable price and meeting the global requirements. So India is exporting generic medicines, and more than 90% out of that is the generic formulations. In the last financial year, we exported $52.93 million worth of generic medicines to New Zealand with 26.12% the growth rate. So you are aware of that, in the New Zealand market, the population is very small, but the budgetary allocations, particularly to the healthcare, is they raised from 15% to 17.5%. Out of 905 million expenditure on pharmaceuticals by New Zealand government, the generic space is $298 million, and India is the fourth largest the importing partner of New Zealand with 15% the contribution. So particularly I understood that Apotex is one of the big companies globally who is in the manufacture of generic drugs. They're going to pull out its 41 medicines from New Zealand, particularly by the end of 2021. So in this particular space, the Pharmac can think about collaborating with Indian pharmaceutical industry. So now, India is in the initial days of manufacturing generics. The Indian companies are only confined their activities to India and exporting to the underdeveloped countries. But now, our 55% of our exports are going to highly regulated markets. At the same time, 9 companies from India out of 25 global generic companies are Dr. Reddy's, Aurobindo, and all these companies are playing a very, very, very important role throughout the globe. And we also have highest number of US FDA approved facilities and other stringent regulatory agencies approved facilities. So what I feel that there is an opportunity for the collaboration between Indian pharmaceutical industry and New Zealand, so that they can import the quality medicines at affordable price, and the whole policy of government of New Zealand in giving more focus to the central procurement. So I think the Pharmac can think seriously about the working with Pharmaceuticals Export Promotion Council of India and India. I still recollect the first ever pharma delegation to New Zealand in July 2019. So with this, thank you very much for INZBC for giving Pharmexcil an opportunity to share our thoughts and be part of this India-New Zealand Business Council Summit. Thank you, Mr. Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Bhaskar. Perhaps you should answer that phone because it might be one of your pharma companies ringing with a breakthrough. We have 4 minutes to go, so a very quick rapid fire question to our last 3 speakers. Can I throw to you first, Dr. Jaitly? Very quick answer. What do you think are the greatest changes required of leaders due to the disruption caused by the pandemic?
Well, we've witnessed some unprecedented times, and I think everybody has shed a lot of light on what challenges we all are facing. But here's something that we all need to understand, that if you want to pivot your leadership style to make sure that your team travel with you, the culture is of a quality where you can survive this pandemic and the crisis that it brings to offer, don't forget that the 3 C's are going to be your pathway to success. I love acronyms because it's easy to remember. So commitment, collaboration, and communication. Adopt on these 3 C's as a business leader and make sure that in every sector, you keep it extremely transparent with a servant leadership style and a management style which is transformational, and add a prefix to your management, which is conflict management, because we are seeing a lot of conflict, not just professionally, but also personally. So in a world of today, Michael, where the lines have gotten blurry with the work from home culture between professional and personal lives, I hope that these insights will really help business leaders of both countries to move forward in a stronger way.
That's great advice, thank you. And Bharat, Joshi, to come to you, please, for your top tip. Given that we're moving beyond bilateral, multilateral policies, what's your top tip for how New Zealand and India should engage going forward? Or to put it another way, how does New Zealand navigate India?
Like my dear friend, Stephen Jacobi, we have the same guru, Yogi Berra, who's quoted in my book. So Yogi Berra also said, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. So, we are now at a fork in the road. We can either keep pushing on this door of FTA and consider it a prerequisite, or we could look at new areas geographically. So we could look at Antarctica, we could look up at space, or at the Pacific Island area. So with the paucity of time, I'll end here. Thank you.
Mr. Michael, I prefer to listen the question once again. Your voice was cracking at that.
Well, apologies. I just was noted the incredible effort of the pharma industry to develop a COVID vaccine so quickly, and it's playing such a pivotal role in at least parts of the world, starting to get back on its feet, at least seeing a pathway through the virus. I just wanted to ask you, what are the key changes you think we will see from the pharma sector now going forward?
I think you're asking about the new normal and how Indian pharmaceutical industry operates and engages with public health.
Correct.
Am I right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So you know that particularly during the pandemic, India has played a very pivotal role in producing and supplying antiviral drugs and other repurposed drugs used in the treatment of the COVID. So particularly in the area of vaccine, actually, this is the first time in the world that any vaccine is being developed within a span of 1 year. So India played a very important role, and Indian companies developed an indigenous vaccine, as well as India collaborated with so many the foreign companies and research institutions in rising to the occasion. And so India also supplied COVID vaccines to different countries. If you see that, particularly the entire world is working together, they're not in isolation. Particularly if you see the proposals of India and South Africa in WTO about waiver of patents to the drugs used in the treatment of the COVID. So the countries like US, they are very stringent in intellectual property rights, also supporting this cause. So the COVID has made the entire world together, and they are working together and to meet this the pandemic in these difficult times. So India is almost 7-8 companies are seriously working on this area. So I think everybody realizes that no one is safe until everyone is safe. So entire world is working together and moving in that direction. So India certainly is going to play a very important role in that area.
Thank you very much. And can I just thank all of our panelists and speakers for some incredibly insightful discussion, for sharing your thoughts tonight. I'll pass back to you, Sunil. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you, and thank you to everyone for joining us on this special session. We will be starting the next session in about 60 seconds after this video. So please bear with us, and we'll shortly join for the last session of the day on services. Thank you.